A few years ago, a mother and a father decided they needed a break, so they wanted to head out for a night on the town. They called their most trusted babysitter. The babysitter arrived, the two children were already asleep in bed, so the babysitter just got to sit around and make sure everything was okay with the children. Later that night, the babysitter got bored and went to watch TV. She couldn't watch it downstairs because they didn't have cable downstairs. The parents didn't want the children watching too much garbage television. So she called them and asked if she could watch cable in the parents' room. Of course, the parents said it was okay, but the babysitter had one final request. She asked if she could cover up the angel statue outside the bedroom. Just kind of weird, isn't it? And she wanted to cover it with like a blanket or cloth. At the very least, close the blinds because it made her nervous. The phone line went silent for a moment. The father, who was talking to the babysitter at the time, said, "Take the children and get out of the house. We will call the police. We do not have an angel statue." The police found all three occupants of the house dead within 3 minutes of the call. No angel statue was ever found. That seemed like a better reading. The English isn't the best for this story. I don't know if it was written by someone whose first language isn't English, because there are like just grammatical errors that don't make sense, or there's just like grammar completely missing, or like words missing where there should be like the. I've added it sometimes, but sometimes I just haven't, because it's a bit awkward to like go as you're reading something to like correct it, and it's just like I don't want to do that. And I also added context because some things like in the story are just said and it doesn't make sense it makes sense because you can like sort of fill in the information, but it should be there like a horror from a horror like narrative standpoint. You don't want to be thinking abstractly about not abstractly, but you don't want to be thinking about filling in information during a horror reading. You want to have basically a lot of the information like that. Like I'll go back and have a look. I was thinking about this somewhere. The phone line went out. No, it wasn't that. She asked if she could cover up. Maybe this is a bad example of what I just said. But when it says she asked if she could cover up the statue outside the bedroom window with a blanket or cloth, you don't need the blanket or cloth thing. Well, you do need a blanket, but you don't need the cloth part. You can just say a blanket, or never, or even more so, get rid of blanket and cloth and just change it into like close the blinds. But then again, that wouldn't make sense. Maybe get rid of the blinds part actually, because you don't need that because you wouldn't ask if you could close the blinds. You would ask if you could like put something over the statue, because that's a bit more like invasive of like their property, I guess. Also the line where it says about talking about the children watching too much garbage. The exact line is the parents didn't want children watching too much garbage, and it should say the parents didn't want the children watching too much garbage. And also garbage, I just don't think like works in a horror story. Like it's a very, maybe it's just because I'm like English, but garbage is like it takes me out of the experience because it just seems like such a how am I trying to word this? Just not a very horror word, is it? You want to say like too much destructive or detrimental. If I could say it, detrimental television or something like that. It should be a bit changed, but obviously this is from like 2000 and let's say 2008 it was written, so it's pretty good considering this. And I'm imagining it was written by like a 13-year-old. So considering all of that, it's not a bad quick minute story to read. And it's also like one of the foundational horror creepypastas, I think. Like it's one of the first ones I ever heard of, other than like Jeff the Killer and such. So I think I'd rate it like, for its time, like 4 out of 10. It's not bad. I went on for quite a bit there about nothing. So I probably went on longer about random stuff that I didn't really explain than I did actually reading the story. So I'll try and go on about more what I was saying when the thing is just missing. I wouldn't say it's missing grammar, actually. It's fine. It's just, I think I was more just saying something. It's more so just like as it's a really short story, but it almost feels like it doesn't even need to be that long. And this could be like I'd say it isn't paragraph, it's one long paragraph, but in reality it's like 2 paragraphs that should be cut It's one big paragraph that is in reality 2 paragraphs, and it only really needs to be like 1. And you get a lot more of that. And also the final line, the police found all 3 of the house occupants dead within 3 minutes of the call. No angel statue was found. You don't need to add the police thing there. You can just put like, because this is from like this is from like a focalized third person point of view, like you're focalized on the babysitter. But obviously the final line goes away from that and it just goes into full third person, into like just what happened. But if you're just gonna go like, you're gonna have the first 99% of it be like focalized third person on the babysitter, then have the final line be like way more third person than it is. It could just say like it could just say like the 3 members, not even the 3 members. Like it comes off as way too like almost academic, like the 3, like a police report, like the police found all 3 household occupants dead within 3 minutes of the call. Like it feels like I'm reading a police report, which may be what the what the writer was going for, which would be fine, but I feel like it takes away from the impact of the deaths, really, because I think it should just say something like the babysitter and the children were found dead, and then like say like they were found dead in the living room, and maybe add like another detail, like you can like keep the no angel statue was ever found, because that's interesting. That adds quite a lot to it. That like, because that goes back into like, this is, by the way, the angel statue is totally the thing that did this without saying it. That's good, because it leaves a lot to be implied and it makes the story more interesting, because you're leaving things open. You're not saying da 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 da. But you could say like, I don't know, it just feels like well, it's technically 2 sentences, because the police were found all 3 occupants of the house dead within 3 minutes. I know I said that quickly. That's 1 sentence. And then the no angel statue was ever found is a separate sentence. But I feel like, 1, you can just go comma, no angel statue was ever found, keep it 1 sentence, keep it clean. You know, taking it into 2 sentences makes it just a bit more like less clean, and more like takes you a bit more out of it when you're reading it. But I think you don't need to add the police found all 3 household occupants. Also, putting all 3 household occupants dead is overly complicated, because we already know. If you say 3 people were found dead, we already know who you're talking about. We know you're talking about the children and the babysitter. You don't need to add any more extra details about like they being household occupants, because we already know. It's not like we wouldn't like. You just don't need to add that. And also within 3 minutes of the call, I think that's fine. Actually, that's a good part to add. It adds a bit more like, well, no, because actually you don't need to add that, because if you're saying the police found them all, then you're already implying it's pretty quickly that they found them dead, because the father called the police as this was fucking happening. So you don't need to add that they found it within 3 minutes, unless you're saying like they were all killed within like 1 minute of each other, because there's 3 household occupants and they was in 3 minutes. But that doesn't mean anything. The fact that they were found dead within 3 minutes doesn't imply anything. Apart, well, unless you're like really thinking about like this is a horror story and therefore 3 means 3. If there's 3 people and there's 3 minutes, and therefore they all died in separate minutes of the thing. Like, sure, maybe. Anyway, I've gone on way too long about a story that doesn't really matter, but it is. It is basically just Doctor Who. Yeah. More 2008. When did the Doctor Who episode come out? Let me Google it. Doctor Who. Oh, what was the episode called? I should know this. I've watched it quite a few times. I think it's just called Weeping Angel, isn't it? Weeping Angel episodes. Blink, of course. Blink came out in 2007. Okay, and this came out in 2008, so it's most likely. I say it's stolen. The idea of statues moving in the dark or when not looked upon is not originally made by Doctor Who, but it was popularized by it. So you can definitely say this story is likely inspired by it. But you could also take it as like, you don't need to take it as it being like a direct copy. You could just take it as like a exploration, and an expansion of what already is written about them. And I think this is quite good. Like, this would be really good if you're like, if you wanted to get someone into like, you should watch the Blink episode of Doctor Who, and they're like, I don't know, it's like 27 minutes. I don't know if I want to watch it. You go, okay, there's this short story. Takes you a minute to read. If you like the premise of this story, watch the episode. If you don't like the premise, then don't watch it. because this is really good if you like. But then again, I was going to go to the SCP thing. What's it, SC? One of the SCPs that's basically a copy of the Weeping Angels. I would say you can get people to read that instead, but that's probably like a longer read than this. I think this is probably the better thing to introduce people to. Like, if you want to go, because I think you don't need to like Doctor Who to like the episode Blink, because it hasn't really got the Doctor in. It's just a really good it's just a really good piece of British media. Anyway, I've said that like 3 times, but that's the end of what I'm talking about. I've gone on for about. I actually have no idea how long I've gone on for, but I think that's enough talking about a story that is not overly important, but has some interesting things to be talked about. Goodbye. Fuck you.